Good morning and welcome to Market Cafe with me Ankur Mishra and Kanishka Sarkar. In next 1 hour we'll get you all the updates that happened on weekend and whatever is mattering to you before opening of market. But let's get started with US market. Good morning Kanishka. How were US markets on Friday?
Very good morning, Ankur. Well, despite the positive initial week, all three key benchmarks on Wall Street saw a major sell-off on Friday as the Israel-Iran attacks pushed energy prices higher and also added another complication at a time of heightened geopolitical uncertainty that there is. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, that fell about 1.8%. The S&P 500, that also dropped over 1%, whereas the Nasdaq Composite, that also slipped more than 1%. Nvidia and other stocks that were actually leading the market's comeback from April lows dropped as investors shed the risk. Oil and defense stocks were higher on Friday. Now, this decline in stocks that we saw on Friday worsened after Israel's defense forces said that Iran launched missiles towards Israel in retaliation for Israel's series of airstrikes. Now, the Iranian state television also said that Iran will not participate in the sixth round of nuclear negotiations with the US that were planned for the weekend. Now, Friday's sell-off dragged the major averages into negative territory for the week. That is, the S&P 500 lost 0.4%, while the Nasdaq, that slipped 0.5%, whereas the Dow, that fell over 1% for the week. However, US equity futures did move up in early Asian trading hours this morning. But how are things looking on the crude front?
Yes, oil is on fire. WTI, in fact, was trading around $72. And if you talk about Brent crude, that touched $75. All this happened because there is a tension which is brewing between Iran and Israel. And not only crude, if you also look at gold, that was trading around $34.40. The year-to-date returns have been 30% till now.
That's right. Continuing the story, now tensions are on a razor's edge in West Asia. Israel's airstrikes on Iran continued for the third straight day, hammering oil refineries and nuclear facilities and killing over 400 people, according to a US-based rights group. Now, Iran hit back with missile strikes, some slamming into Israeli cities. Now, in a twist, reports say that Donald Trump vetoed an Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader. Meanwhile, Netanyahu claims that Iran tried to kill him with a missile strike that missed his bedroom window. With nuclear talks cancelled, both sides are vowing escalation and the region is staring down at a possible full-blown war. Moreover, Trump has warned a total retaliation if the US is hit. Israel has unleashed airstrikes across Iran for a third day on Sunday and threatened even greater force as some Iranian missiles evaded Israeli air defense to strike buildings in the heart of the country. Now, planned talks on Iran's nuclear program, which could provide an off-ramp, were cancelled over the weekend.
And moving on, as I was discussing earlier, oil prices surged again over 3% on Sunday as Israel bombed two major gas facilities in Iran's South Pars field and stuck an oil depot near Tehran. Iran fired back, damaging a refinery in Hafia, stoking fears of a regional energy war. US crude jumped nearly 4% to more than $74. And while Brent continues to hover around $676 mark, that's on top of Friday's 7% spike, marking the biggest weekly gain since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Now, Iran is threatening to shut down Hormuz, which is a choke point for 1/5 of global oil. Analysts warn prices could shoot past $100 if it happens, though some doubt Iran can pull it off. Ashesha is joining in to explain the ramifications of oil prices surging.
Well, yes, after the 7% uptick that we saw on Friday and 12% for the last full week, Brent crude is up another 1% today and it has now crossed that $75 per barrel mark on account of escalating tensions in the Middle East. Remember, it was just on the 5th of May that Brent crude touched the recent low of $60 per barrel, and since then it has recovered nearly 25%. So that's the kind of up move that we have seen over the last few days on account of rising tensions in the Middle East. Now remember, Middle East produces nearly 1/3 of the global crude oil requirements, and the Strait of Hormuz is the key waterway that transfers all the crucial oil. So any disruption in supply is likely to directly have an impact on prices. Now, JP Morgan also came out with a report last week where they said that Brent crude prices could touch $130 per barrel if disruption likely escalates going forward. So that's the kind of up move that we could see going forward on account of rising tensions in the Middle East. Now, this is directly going to have an impact on the Indian economy. Remember, India imports nearly 85% of its crude oil requirements, and for every $10 per barrel increase in oil prices, current account deficit likely increases by about 13 to 14 billion US dollars, which is 0.4% of the GDP, and wholesale and retail inflation is also likely to be impacted on account of this. So yes, for now, Brent crude has crossed $75 per barrel mark, an up move of 12% last week and about 1 to 1.5% today morning as well, and any further supply disruption is likely to keep oil prices in focus.
All right, thank you, Ashesha, for all those details on crude. Now, amid these rising tensions between Israel and Iran, the world is staring at possible disruptions in oil supply, with Iran threatening to close Strait of Hormuz. Now, the narrow waterway passage is a major route for many West Asian nations, with almost 21 million barrels of oil passing through it daily. Ashesha is here to throw more light on why this is significant, amid the mounting West Asian troubles.
Well, yes, as I mentioned, Middle East produces nearly 1/3 of global crude oil requirements, and Middle East producers ship about 1/5 of the world's daily crude oil output, this particular Strait of Hormuz. So that's how important this particular waterway is. And remember, in the past, Tehran has already blocked this particular supply route for supply of oil. So any kind of disruption that we see could likely put further pressure on oil prices going forward. And now nearly 21 million barrels of oil passes through this particular waterway, which is 26% of global oil consumption. And Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE are some of the countries which rely on this particular route to supply their oil to several countries globally. Now remember, Iran borders the strait and has already threatened to to block this particular waterway in the past. So if that happens, this is likely to put further pressure on oil prices. So that's how important this waterway is. And as of now, there are no disruptions, but analysts and experts fear that if Tehran blocks this waterway, it could likely put further pressure on oil prices globally.
Thanks, Ashesha, for all those details. Also, listen in John Bolton, former advisor of US President Donald Trump, who spoke exclusively with Swati Joshi of Times Network. Let's listen into that conversation.
You know, the Iranian war against Israel really began on October the 7th, 2023, when Hamas attacked into the Gaza Strip. And we've seen a regional war playing out since then. I think Israel waited a long, long time before taking this step, and I believe that they took it now because they really believed Iran was on the verge of acquiring a nuclear capability. The Iranian leadership had vowed death to the little Satan, as they call Israel. With that threat rising and the chance that Iran would disperse its nuclear facilities to make them harder to attack, Israel's decided to strike. So I think this really is a legitimate strike, and we'll see what the Iranian response is now. And I'm sure there will be one.
Absolutely. Now, if the situation escalates, Mr. Bolton, what, according to you, are going to be the repercussions globally? Also, there are a lot of people who are saying, is this the beginning of World War III? How do you see that statement?
I don't think it's anything close to that. Look, right now, it's a war between Iran and its terrorist proxies and Israel. Israel has responded in that war. I'm sure Iran will retaliate against Israel. The question is, will they strike anybody else? Will they be foolish enough to attack American deployed forces in the region, which would immediately bring the U.S. into a war? It would be the end of the regime with absolute certainty. I don't think they'll do that. will Iran retaliate against the Gulf Arab states? Will they try to attack their oil infrastructure? Again, that's possible. But Iran is having trouble dealing with Israel. Do they need 6 more enemies in the form of the Gulf Cooperation Council? Do they need a 7th enemy in the form of the United States? This is a very strange medieval regime run by religious fanatics, so I don't rule anything out. But I think even this regime in Tehran knows that it's existential to them if they go after anybody other than Israel.
All right, that's the latest expert view coming in on Iran and Israel tensions. But before we get more on that, let's also take a look at all the events that we should be watching out for today. First of all, in India, we'll have the WPI data that's going to come out. In the US, we have Empire manufacturing data. That is something that we'll be watching out for. In China, we have retail sales as well as industrial production data that we'll be watching out for. Now, in terms of corporate action, Bajaj Finance shares are to trade ex-bonus issue at a ratio of 4:1. They'll also trade ex-stock split in the ratio 2:1, whereas the Entertainment Board, that is expected to mull fundraising later in the day. It's also the last day to buy shares to be eligible for a dividend when it comes to Hindustan Zinc. Apart from that, we have the International Paris Air Show today that we'll be watching out for.
All right, moving on. Donald Trump has officially greenlit the $14 billion merger between US Steel and Japan's Nippon Steel, reversing earlier opposition. The approval follows a national security deal giving US a golden share, granting significant control, including board seats. The arrangement also includes $11 billion in Nippon-led investments in the US by 2028, with more planned beyond. The merger faced earlier roadblocks under Biden administration, but Trump now touts it as win for US jobs and steel security.
That's right. Now moving on, the Trump administration may also dramatically expand its travel ban, eyeing restrictions on citizens from 36 more countries. According to an internal State Department cable, nations have 60 days to meet security and documentation benchmarks or face full or partial bans. Now, this comes as weeks after Trump blocked entry from 12 countries as part of sweeping immigration crackdown, citing terrorism threats. Now, the cable, signed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, flags weak passports, poor deportation, cooperation, and extremist activity as key issues.
And Boeing has trimmed its long-term outlook for global jet demand, now projecting 43,600 new aircraft deliveries through 2044, slightly down from last year. While air travel is expected to surge 40% by 2030, Boeing lowered growth forecast for passenger traffic, cargo, and global economy. Production struggles and safety concerns still loom, with 737 MAX output capped and Dreamliner crash under the investigation. China and Southeast Asia will drive future demand, while half of deliveries will replace aging fleets, Boeing says. And moving on, 3 major central banks are in the spotlight this week. The Bank of Japan meets today and tomorrow and likely to hold rates at 0.5%, but continuing bond tapering markets will watch out signal for expectation is that 400 billion yen tapering will continue by Bank of Japan, while US Federal Reserve follows meeting with 17th and 18th of June and expected to pause rates at 4.25 to 4.5%. Remember, Donald Trump has been quite vocal about Fed should cut rates in the meeting, but the expectation is that there will be no tinkering. Investors will eye revisions to its dot plot and Chair Powell comments, especially amid inflation risk from West Asian tensions and Trump's persistent calls for rate cuts. Similarly, later in the week, Bank of England outcome is scheduled for 19th of June, expected to hold steady at 4.25%, with the next move likely in August, pending key inflation data, which is set to be released on 18th of June.
All right, then moving on to an update from the G7. Now, G7 leaders are gathering in Canada this week, but the summit is overshadowed by rising West Asian tensions and Trump's trade battles. Now, Israel's strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliation have sparked global alarm, with Britain now deploying jets in the region. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, en route to the summit, called for de-escalation while recognizing Israel's right to self-defense. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi made history with the first visit by an Indian PM to Cyprus in over 2 decades. At a high-level business roundtable, Modi emphasized deepening trade, defense and investment ties. Now, calling Cyprus a trusted partner, Modi highlighted its strategic value as a gateway to Europe and noted $150 million in bilateral trade, while stressing relationships' true potential is far greater. Sumita is joining us with all the details.
That's right. The G7 summit is currently on in Canada. The Prime Minister is, of course, clubbing that a visit with a visit to Cyprus and Croatia as well. But let's come back to G7. Well, it's a gathering of 7 key economies of the world: Japan, Italy, US, Germany, France, Britain, Canada. But there's also going to be participation from other countries, reportedly like Ukraine, for example, Australia, South Africa, Mexico, South Korea and Brazil. But there is a very interesting background this time around to the G7. Number one, the Israel-Iran crisis has only escalated. The tariff and trade wars, those, of course, they are leading to a global reset and the kind of challenges that they're bringing. They could be touching upon on that aspect as well. Then, of course, climate and energy security is another agenda, global supply chains, digital acceleration, disruption in global trade. Remember, that's going to be a key agenda that could perhaps be touched upon, but how exactly will it be touched upon by the leaders? That remains to be seen. But the key to watch out also will be not just the sessions, not just the key sessions, but also the bilateral and multilateral meetings that leaders have on the margins of the G7, and what exactly will those yield, the kind of tone and tenor that they will take. For instance, the United States president, who's negotiating deals with most of these countries, how will those conversations go, and will it impact interim deals by these countries? Then, of course, from an India perspective, there is definitely a chance to reset trade, reset ties, bilateral ties with Canada. Remember, they soured during the Trudeau administration. But this time around, Mark Carney said, while extending an invitation to the Prime Minister, that India is the 5th largest economy in the world, the most populous country, and central to supply chains. So this, engagement of the Prime Minister with the Canadian Prime Minister, that's going to be key to watch out for. The kind of engagement that he has with other leaders, those will also be interesting, to sort of focus on. And the stance that some of these leaders have on the pressing issues that are concerning the world, that will be key. And of course, on the basis of that, the big question will be whether there's going to be a joint communique by these leaders.
Thanks, Sumita. Definitely these questions needs to be answered in the G7 meet. But moving on, PM is in Cyprus and he has made important comments regarding India investing more than $100 billion annually in the development of futuristic infrastructure. And PM Modi has mentioned these comments during India-Cyprus CEO forum. Let's listen in what PM actually said.
भारत में फ्यूचरिस्टिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के विकास में हम $100 बिलियन से अधिक का सालाना निवेश कर रहे हैं। इस वर्ष के बजट में हमने मैन्युफैक्चरिंग मिशन की शुरुआत की है। विश्व में वैक्सीन्स, जेनरिक मेडिसिन्स और मेडिकल डिवाइसेस के मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में भारत वर्ल्ड लीडर्स में से एक है। मैरीटाइम और पोर्ट डेवलपमेंट पर हमारा फोकस है। हम शिप बिल्डिंग और शिप ब्रेकिंग को भी प्राथमिकता दे रहे हैं। इसके लिए एक नई पॉलिसी भी लाई जा रही है। सिविल एविएशन सेक्टर में भी तेजी से ग्रो कर रहा है।
All right, then shifting focus to some domestic updates. Now, tragedy struck in Pune as an old iron bridge collapsed amid heavy rainfall, killing 4 and injuring 51 people. Now, the sudden collapse, triggered by a surge in the Indrayani River, swept away several people as tourists crowded the area. NDRF teams have rescued almost 40 people so far, with operations still ongoing. The state government has announced 5 lakh rupees aid for families of the deceased, while political parties trade blame. Lapses in safety, including the absence of barricades, are now under scrutiny. Let's also listen into what Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis had to say about the tragic incident.
काही लोक अडकलेले आहेत, त्यांच्याकरता एनडीआरएफची टीम त्या ठिकाणी पोहोचते आहे, त्यांना रेस्क्यू करण्याकरता. काही लोक वाहून गेल्याची शक्यता आहे. अजून त्या संदर्भातलं पूर्ण कन्फर्मेशन मिळालेलं नाही किंवा कॅज्युअल्टीजच्या संदर्भातलं पूर्ण कन्फर्मेशन मिळालं नाही. त्यामुळे या क्षणाला त्याबद्दल बोलणं हे योग्य ठरणार नाही. पूर्ण माहिती याची मिळाल्यानंतर याच्यावर आपल्याला माहिती देता येईल. आता प्रशासन तातडीनं सगळी मोबिलायझेशन करून आणि लोकांना कसा दिलासा देता येईल अशा प्रकारचा प्रयत्न चाललेला आहे.
Another chopper tragedy in Uttarakhand has raised urgent questions about the safety practices of tour operators. 7 people, including a 2-year-old child and a pilot who was a former army officer, died. And that happened after a helicopter crashed near Gaurikund on its return from Kedarnath. Poor visibility and cloud cover are believed to have caused this crash. The operator RN Aviation has been booked and all Chardham helipad services are now suspended. CM Dhami has ordered strict safety norms as it marks a 5th chopper incident in just 6 weeks.
बहुत दुखद घटना है, जिनकी जान गई है, जो हताहत हुए हैं, उनके लिए भगवान से प्रार्थना करता हूं. इनको गंभीरता से लेते हुए हमने तत्काल एक आपातकालीन बैठक बुलाई है और उस बैठक में निर्देश दिए हैं कि एक सख्त एसओपी बनाई जाए, जिसमें किसी भी कीमत पर जो हमारे डीजीसीए के रूल हैं, मानक हैं, उनके मानकों के साथ किसी भी प्रकार का कोई भी ढिलाई न बरती जाए. और जो इस घटना में दोषी हैं, जिनके कारण से घटना हुई है, उनको तत्काल उनके खिलाफ सख्त कार्रवाई की जाए. आज और कल हेली सेवा नहीं चलेंगी. खराब मौसम भी है और जब तक यात्रियों की सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित नहीं हो जाती है, तब तक ये सेवाएं बंद रहेंगी.
All right, now moving on, investigation into the deadly Air India crash is accelerating as a high-level committee meets for the first time. Chaired by the Home Secretary, the panel will recommend safety protocols within 3 months. Meanwhile, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau is probing black box data, ATC logs, and also staff records to determine if the tragedy was caused by a human error or a technical failure. Now, the aviation regulator has ordered urgent inspection of all 34 Boeing 787s in India. So far, 8 have been checked. As authorities begin to hand over the remains of the Ahmedabad plane crash victims, Gujarat Health and Family Welfare Minister has said that 47 DNA samples have matched as of now, and more than 20 bodies have been handed over to their families. He also highlighted that it would take 3 to 4 days to hand over all the bodies.
All right, with this, it's time to take a quick break, but don't go away. More news and updates will follow on the other side.
When the stakes are high and the answers are elusive, there's one voice unafraid to challenge the status quo.
At 8 p.m., I am not here to sugarcoat the truth.
Also, commentary on bond tapering. Apart from that, if you look at other markets, Kospi is also trading in green, but Hang Seng and Shanghai almost flat. Hang Seng is down just 40 points, and if you look at Shanghai, it is trading flat to positive with just 4 points into positive territory. But even Australian markets are now trading in green, up 12 points as we 8 points as we speak, and Nifty implied open is suggesting 63 points premium as of now. So after a tough kind of a Friday, we can see a positive opening in the Indian market. But moving on, have you ever wondered how Reserve Bank of India actually works behind the scenes? Now Reserve Bank has got answers for you. To mark 90th year, the Reserve Bank of India has launched a special documentary series titled RBI Unlocked Beyond the Rupee. And this is offering an inside look at the institution's roles, responsibilities and lesser known operations. The series aims to demystify the workings of India's monetary authority, from policy corridors to cash logistics. Episode 2 is out now and taking viewers inside RBI's high security currency printing presses, where India's banknotes come to life. You can watch this series in Jio Plus Hotstar.
All right, then moving on, the month of May witnessed several block deals with sizable fund participation. Now let's go to Sharad to give us a list of all the stocks which mutual funds shopped this May. Sharad, take it away.
There was a significant mutual fund action in the month of May, especially in the large cap segment. A new entrant coming in is Adani Green. An interesting report from Nuvana Institutional Equities, with the key blocks, we had seen larger blocks coming from ITC, Bharti Airtel and even Interglobe Aviation. Now the buying, if you look at it, is Tata Steel and Bajaj Auto, where fresh positions were added, but selling, you see the numbers were a bit higher. TCS, BEL, ICICI Bank, Bajaj Finance and even IndusInd Bank making it to the list. Now let's look at what action has happened in the mid-cap space. Mid-cap space, the buying is coming in for Dalmia Bharat, PI Industries, HPCL and also PB Fintech. New entrant is Yes Bank. Recently they have credit rating upgrade as well, and key selling, if you look at it, of course IHCL, Coromandel, they have made it to the list. From the new age tech companies, deliveries there, and from pharma space, Max Healthcare and IT, there is Persistent Systems. Now let's look at the action for the small caps, where the buying has happened in NBFC, NBCC, MOSFL, that is Motilal Oswal Financial Service, and even PNB Housing Finance. In terms of selling or putting the stake down, that is BSC, Cochin Shipyard from the defense space, and also Hitachi Energy and Paradeep Phosphates.
All right, moving on, Vedanta will be in focus on the back of board meeting which is slated for 18th of June, as it may consider first interim dividend for FY26. Ashesha is joining us to tell mining conglomerate dividend history and likely payout for this fiscal year.
Well, yes, Vedanta will be in focus today because they will be considering first interim dividend for FY26 in the board of directors meeting that is scheduled to happen on the 18th of June. Now, remember, although this is the first dividend for this fiscal, Vedanta has a strong dividend payout history. In FY25, they paid a total dividend of 43.5 rupees per share. In FY24, 40.5 rupees per share and about 101.8 rupees per share in the year prior. Remember, Hindustan Zinc last week declared a dividend of 10 rupees per share, which translates to a total of about 4,225 crores. And Vedanta owns about 63.4% stake in the company, which means by virtue of 10 rupees per share dividend that Hindustan Zinc announced last week, Vedanta will get about 2,660 odd crores, excluding tax implications, if any. Now, if Vedanta goes ahead and distributes this full amount as dividend, remember Vedanta Resources owns about 56.4% stake in the company, which means Vedanta Resources will get about 1,500 odd crores, and shareholders of Vedanta will get a bare minimum of 8 rupees per share. So that's the kind of dividend expectation the street is likely to have from the announcement that is likely to come on the 8th of June. Now, there are several triggers for Vedanta Limited. One, of course, is demerger of its companies into 4 companies, which is likely to happen in the next few quarters. And the company has also announced a slew of capex plans across its divisions, be it aluminium, steel or several other segments. So for now, Vedanta will be in focus on account of this dividend announcement in the board of directors meeting that is scheduled to happen on the 8th of June.
All right, then as I mentioned earlier, tragedy struck in Pune as an old iron bridge collapsed amid heavy rainfall, killing 4 and injuring 51 people. Now, this was triggered by a surge in the Indriani River that swept away several people as tourists crowded the area. Let's go across to Rucha of Times Network, who's getting us the ground report.
The rescue team is back here in the morning. Yesterday, the rescue operation by NDRF was stopped due to the situation, due to the darkness in the area. But in the morning, it has begun again, and many people are The rescue team is back here in the morning. Yesterday, the rescue operation by NDRF was stopped due to the situation, due to the darkness in the area. But in the morning, it has begun again, and many people are still missing, is what the families are telling us. This is the location at Talegaon, Dabhade. This is Indrayani River, which we can see, and the bridge which has collapsed is located on Kundmala waterfall. This is a very famous tourist spot here in Pune, and people were gathered here only to enjoy the view of this location and to enjoy a monsoon Sunday. But it later turned out to be a tragedy, and due to the weight of the bridge, due to the people, lots of people were standing on the bridge on the same time. The bridge couldn't take the weight, and the structure we can see has fallen down is made of iron only, but the rest of the bridge's part is made of cement. Only the part which is exactly above the river area is made of iron and was not in good condition. And now this is a 30-year-old bridge, and the locals have continuously reported many complaints about this location, about new bridge they were demanding. But despite the government's sanctioning of a new bridge, this bridge was not closed properly. There are some warning signboards put here, but despite that, the tourists continue to use this bridge, and this was actually supposed to be only for the usage of pedestrians, because this bridge connects the two villages. We can see behind the temple there's another village, and this is the only way that the pedestrians, the villagers, could walk here and there, and this was meant for pedestrians only. But the people who witnessed this told us that for almost 4 to 5 minutes the entire bridge was shaking, and there were bikes on the bridge. In the structure, we can see in the iron structure that has fallen into the river, there are 3 bikes stuck even now, and it was very difficult to take them out because of the flow of the river is so fast. It is orange alert in Ghat areas of Pune, and since 2-3 days in many parts of Pune, waterlogging was also reported, and the water level is continuously increasing, which made it very difficult for the NDRF and the rescue teams to rescue people out. Now 51 people are admitted to the nearest 4 hospitals, and 4 people have unfortunately lost their lives, while some families are still saying that they are their family members are missing.
All right, with this, it's time to take a quick break. Don't go away. More news and updates will follow on the other side.
When the stakes are high and the answers are elusive, there's one voice unafraid to challenge the status quo.
At 8 p.m., I am not here to sugarcoat the truth. I am here to ask the hard questions. Because when others play it safe, I go straight to the heart of the matter. It's not about left or right. It's about what's...
Escalation between Iran and Israel has now pushed Brent crude up to $75 per barrel. So watch out for how all of these stocks react in today's trade. Other than that, if you take a look at the pharma pack, a couple of stocks from this space are going to be in focus today. Syngene, positive news flow coming in for Syngene. They've received EIR from the US FDA for the routine GMP inspection held in their Bangalore facility, and this has been concluded with voluntary action indicated. And second, the US FDA FDA also conducted a GECP inspection in Syngene Semicon Park facility, which has concluded successfully with no action indicated and 0 Form 483 observations. So positive outcome for both of these inspections for Syngene. Natco Pharma, on the other hand, slightly negative news coming in because the US FDA conducted their inspection for their API manufacturing plant, which is concluded with 1 Form 483 observation. IRERA will be in focus because the NCLT Ahmedabad has admitted the IBC application that the company had filed against Gensol Engineering for 510 crores and against its subsidiary for almost 219 crore rupees. ITC will be in focus. They've acquired the entire share capital of Shresth Natural Bioproducts, which is Organic India, Organic 24 that they operate private limited for 400 crore rupees entirely. Yes Bank, they've got an credit rating upgrade from Moody's, so that is going to be in focus. Godrej Properties has just this morning announced that they are going to be developing a 14-acre land parcel into a premium residential project with a revenue potential of 1,500 crore rupees. And last but not the least, most importantly, watch out for Nazara Tech in today's trading session, because Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has completely offloaded his entire estate. His estate has offloaded the entire stake from June 9 to June 12. Entire 5% stake has been sold in different block deals. So watch out for all of these stocks in today's trade.
Thanks, Snehi, for that long list of stocks which will be in focus today. But there is one more stock which will be in focus, and that's HDFC Life, which will be in focus on the back of its management meet. The company keeps FY 26-27 estimates unchanged. Varun is joining in with other highlights and what are the brokerages penciling in before this meeting.
Definitely. So there was a management week with HDFC Life, and Antique has come out with a note on the same. They have a buy call on the price, stock with the price target of 860 rupees. Now they say that the regulatory concerns and the competitive pressure, they seem to be receding, and management reiterated their aspirations to grow AP better than the industry and actually double AP every 4 to 4.5 years. Now they say that the Q1 of FY26 is actually better than what they were actually estimating, with the April and May posting the overall retail AP growth of around 10% and the overall AP growth of around 14.4%. Also, the management is focusing on driving higher absolute VNB growth rather than margin. In fact, they say because of the favorable product mix and also overall the growth that the company is delivering, the overall VNB margin would be better, but that would be actually reinvested into distribution and technology, and hence the VNB margins would be range bound, but the overall VNB growth would be better. Also, they say that the agency and broker channel, they will drive the overall growth for the company, and the overall bank are to focus on the profitability. They expect 16 to 17% CAGR growth in APE and VNB over FY25 and 27, and hence they have a buy call on the stock with a price target of 860 rupees.
All right. Thank you, Varun, for getting us all those details. But moving on and keeping with the market space now, Vikas Khemani, the founder of Carnelian Asset Management, shared with us his outlook on the Indian market's performance amid the global tensions that are underway. Now, he also shared that he expects India's earnings growth to be robust in FY26, led by positive macro cues. Let's listen in.
As far as the markets are concerned, I think we had a lot of global uncertain environment in terms of tariffs, news around tariffs, whether it is about India or vis-a-vis China. But at the same time, we had a lot of good positive news as far as the domestic economy is concerned, whether it is our tax collections to RBI's solid action to boost economy in last 6 months, including the last policy. So I think as far as the way I see is that there are a lot of positives happening domestically in an otherwise global uncertain environment. Markets having recovered from the recent lows might find a little bit of consolidation phase or a correction phase. I do not see any reason for a steep correction or a steep fall, but you never know. These are the things short-term. Calling out any short-term movements of the market is futile. According to me, the way I think is that India's story remains intact, and the earnings growth in India this year will be very robust, thanks to the solid action by the RBI in bringing the interest rates down, inflation being down, and I think credit growth picking up. So net, from a medium to long term perspective, any correction coming would be an opportunity. I don't see a major risk, but short term is very hard to call out.
Absolutely, and I think time has told us, or rather history has told us, that markets eventually do climb the wall of worry. But Vikas, like you said, it couldn't get any better for India, right? You've got a bazooka coming in from the RBI, you've got an above normal monsoon and an early arrival of monsoon at that. Inflation seems to be under control. The economy is holding up well. At an index level, do you think all the best is priced in for now, at least?
It looks like that, a lot of good news is in price from a short-term perspective. I said, again, it depends on your horizon. If you think 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, it is not priced in. But if you know next 1 to 3 months, I guess it is priced in. So that's the reason I said that market probably might consolidate here for some time. And if news develops probably a little negative, then it can also correct a little bit. So these are the normal part of the market, journey. And, we don't pay too much attention from a short-term perspective, to be honest.
All right. Hi, Vikas. This is Shrishti also joining in. And Vikas, time and again, you have debated about the premium valuations that Indian markets do hold. But with the recent move of 50 basis point of cut, Vikas, in the rate cuts, this will definitely translate into higher valuations if somebody takes the hat off the DCF and look at from the DCF lens. Give us some sense that in which sectors you believe that the valuation reset can happen the most?
As far as the interest rates are concerned, when the discounting rate comes down, it applies to all sectors, of course, depending on the capital efficiency and a lot of other assumptions on the growth. Impact on each sector, could be different, but in general, the overall equity valuations do tend to go up. Like we recently wrote a note also around it, and where we said that, very often we don't understand the implication of interest rate cut in discounting rate very easily, as much as we understand in a asset class with the predicted cash flows. Equity is slightly more complex in that sense. But as a rule of thumb, even if you say a 2% drop in the interest rates, which is a 2% drop in the discounting rate, which is a function of risk-free rate and risk premium, in India's case, both are coming down because of structural repair India has gone through. And because of that, we are seeing, valuations are going to get lifted and they are kind of premium. A 2% drop in the interest rates, everything else remaining same, increases the equity valuation in and around 35%. So I think that we will see in times to come, because, in pessimist time, people don't believe growth assumptions. In optimist time, people do overbelieve the growth assumptions. I do believe right now there's a lot of skepticism around India's earning growth this year, like we saw in Q4 of last year. But I think we will see earnings upgrade. I don't see too much pessimism around the earnings in India. And as those numbers come by quarter after quarter, you will see India getting re-rated.
All right. After Vikas Khemani, it's the time to hear from Lawrence Blanco, who's technical analyst at CLSA. But it is also time to say goodbye and leave you with Lawrence Blanco's words of wisdom.
The break of 100, we think, is meaningful. Not only does it end the trading range that you had from 2022, but we think it does mark the peak to the dollar bull market that you've had from the 2011 lows. So we think a major trend reversal is playing out. The breakdown from that 2022 to 2025 trading range with the break below 100 gets the dollar index down to the 89 to 90 area. So we think at least another 9% downside in the dollar. And historically, what we've seen, a weaker dollar has been positive for the broader emerging market index. And if you look at the EM versus DM ratio, that bottomed in December. We haven't made any new relative lows. And it does look like we're retracing against a trend of underperformance that we've seen over the past 15 years. So we really think we're just at the beginning of a re-rating in the emerging market basket. And India, while it hasn't been top performer year to date, we still think it is going to be one of the top performing or better performing emerging markets. And our longer term upside target for the Nifty still sits at over 37,000. So trend is there and we think continues to improve.
That's, of course, 2030, Lawrence. But within the year, where do you see the Nifty range? Because it clearly seems like it's just a matter of time that Nifty also will try and play catch up with its global peers, which are already hitting fresh highs.
Sure. I mean, so we wouldn't be surprised through the summer months that we get above the 26,300, then potentially see another consolidation period, and then obviously we think stair step towards that 37,000 area. But yeah, the first target we're focusing on is that 26,300 through the summer.
You say that. But Lawrence, what do you think the texture of the Nifty is going to be? And I'll come back to the debate on large caps versus what's happening in SMEDs, but purely within the Nifty, because what we've seen since start of the week is that there is a great sectoral churn which is at play. The underperformers are the ones which are pushing up. So it's not just financials, but IT, which was the most unloved sector, FMCG, they are the ones which are actually propping up. Do you sense that the rally in India is going to get more broader with days to come and the underperformers will participate now?
Look, I think you've seen a rotation into the laggards right now. You've seen it in the US where the stocks that have performed the worst over the past 12 months have outperformed the best performing stocks over the past 12 months. And that's only happened in the month of June. And you've seen it in the local market. We're starting to see it in a bit of China too. So this is a bit of a rotation theme that you're seeing globally. I would take a step back and look at, we don't think there's a change in leadership, that the leadership within the Indian market will remain centered around the financials, and your underperforming spaces in IT, pharma and FMCG is likely to continue. So outside of the short-term rebound and rotation into laggards, we think the structural uptrend from financials is well intact. And, into that 37,000 target that we have, financials will be a key leader in that.
But other than financials,
when the stakes are high and the answers are elusive, there's one voice unafraid to challenge the status quo.
At 8 p.m., I am not here to sugarcoat the truth. I am here to ask the hard questions. Because when others play it safe, I go straight to the heart of the matter. It's not about left or right. It's about what's right for India. It's about holding the powerful accountable.
India Upfront with Pranesh Roy, weeknights at 8 p.m. only on Times Now. No spin,